OC. Viewer discretion is advised. Incoming transmission in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, it's Courtney here from the Outcasted OC channel. Welcome to our YouTube channel. We're doing something a little different today. So I was talking with the crew and we thought to ourselves, we should upload a video for the Cody Rhodes documentary. So I've just finished watching it. I wrote some notes down and I thought this is such a good time for us to talk about it. The documentary itself has been everywhere, like you can't go anywhere in the wrestling world without hearing that this documentary exists. So let's have a wee chat about it. I just want to say before I start, I am repping a Cody Rhodes shirt. I thought it would be fitting to do so considering that I'm going to be talking about Cody Rhodes. So the documentary starts off at the very beginning of Cody's story. Now, they are talking about him as a child growing up with Dusty as a father. There is a part where they're talking about Dusty's legacy in WWE and him winning that championship in that match against superstar Billy Graham. Now, he didn't actually officially win the title, but he won the match. The way that happened was because the champion cannot win via a countout. During that match, superstar Billy Graham was out of the ring and Dusty won via countout. So they showed the picture of Dusty holding the championship, which eventually was stripped away because he did not actually defeat the champion. And Cody starts talking about why that championship means so much to him as a child and obviously so much to him as an adult now. It's the opportunity for one of the Rhodes boys to actually win that championship and present it to Dusty and say, this is what you never had the chance to properly hold for yourself during your career. Now, during this, there is these wee little segments where they are showing Cody walking through a desert and he's walking through various parts of his life. So there's different things that are attributes to him throughout his entire journey. And he's walking through the desert. I believe at this stage he walks in and he grabs this picture out of the sand. And it's a picture of Dusty holding the championship. So through different parts of this documentary, I'll be referencing different parts of him walking through the sand dunes and picking up different parts and noticing different aspects of his wrestling career. So we then move on to him talking about his home life with Dusty, and Cody was very close to his father, and Cody was doing, I think, American football or something like that, and one of the coaches when he was a little boy basically said, like, you should really get Cody into wrestling. So Cody started wrestling at the age of 9 in school, and there were a lot of comparisons to him and Dusty. Obviously, having a father that is that popular, you are bound to receive comparisons and criticism based on your father's work on whatever you produce yourself. So Cody was starting to feel the comparisons. People were like, oh, you need to beat Dusty over there to their other kids. And, Cody started to feel that pressure at a really young age. My dad is such this massive figure in the wrestling industry. I'm going to constantly get compared to him. So Cody's rise began in high school wrestling when he was younger. He was really good at what he did. He became state champion 2 years in a row. In his senior year, his record in terms of his win and loss rate, he had 101 wins to 2 losses, and that's how they stopped talking about the high school wrestling segment. Now, Cody references that this was something he really enjoyed, he really loved. He wasn't good at it at first, but eventually with time and energy and a lot of strength training putting into what he's doing, he actually eventually became a really good high school wrestler. And after this, when he went away from high school, his mum was asking him, do you want to go to college? And he said, I don't really want to go to college. Like, college isn't for everybody. So he ends up joining his sister Teal, and they both go to Hollywood to pursue acting. Now, at this stage, Dusty's having a lot of financial troubles. He's barely able to keep the power going, but he did something really gracious, and Cody was very happy that, Dusty did this for him and his sister, but also was very emotionally struck. So Dusty had a Rolex watch that he pawned in at a pawn shop. So that's like a store where you take your goods and you can get money back off of them. And he took a watch and he got $20,000 and gave $10,000 to each of the kids for them to use when they were in Hollywood. So they both went off to Hollywood, and I think Cody was maybe 19 at this time, 18 or 19, and he went and studied acting at the Howard Fine Acting Studio. Now, he really enjoyed studying acting and learning about the craft and learning about how to properly use his emotions and just the actual emotional acting side of everything. But during this time, he was very depressed when he was in LA, and it got to a stage where he drove from LA all the way to Georgia in 48 hours, basically, because he had this realization that, I'm not happy in Hollywood doing this acting. I felt like I had a higher sense of purpose when I was doing my wrestling. And it dawned on him that he really wanted to start wrestling full time, doing what his dad did. So he drove all the way from LA to Georgia to tell his dad his dream. So when Dusty and Cody had started to come to the realization that Cody wanted to pursue wrestling, Dusty said, "You're going to do this, and if you're going to do this, you have to do this to be the best." So Cody Rhodes started off in OVW at the beginning of his WWE journey. He was thriving in OVW, he was loving it, he was enjoying it, and it got to the stage where Dusty Rhodes was going to be inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame. Now, it was Dustin and Cody that got to do the speech to induct Dusty into the Hall of Fame. And Cody Rhodes' speech was fantastic. It was incredible. It actually got to the point where the speech had impressed Vince McMahon so much to the point where Vince went ahead and said that this kid is going to be huge. This then resulted in a very early call-up for Cody Rhodes from OVW. Cody said, I feel like I'm going to get an early call-up after this because Vince McMahon, after the Hall of Fame speech, actually wanted to meet with Cody Rhodes. So Cody ended up getting called up from OVW. He felt like he might not have been ready for it, but he had his Monday Night Raw debut against Randy Orton, and he talks about that match, and he says that, I came in and I was presented as a rookie, but being presented as a rookie is a really good thing because not only can you make mistakes, but you can also grow up in front of the audience. And he said that he doesn't think that he could have had any better of a debut in the WWE main roster. Now, I did forget to mention earlier on, this documentary is actually narrated by Stephen Amell. Stephen Amell is in the TV show Arrow, and he also is in the TV show Heels, which is that wrestling TV show that shows a little bit of the independent wrestling scene. And during this documentary as well too, we do get to see a lot of superstar cameos from wrestlers past and present, and we also get to see a lot of cameos from people who have been very influential in Cody's life. So I just thought I would mention that before we get too deep into the documentary. So after this talk about his Monday Night Raw debut, we end up hearing a little bit from Randy about how he felt about that moment. And Cody starts talking about how, like I said, he was growing up in front of the WWE universe and would constantly get the comparisons between him and Dusty, because you carry such a huge legacy with that Rhodes last name. He's starting to feel a lot more of the comparisons on the main roster because you are in such a more populated area. A lot more people watch WWE Raw and SmackDown than they did OVW. So you're in front of a lot more eyes. So he was starting to feel the comparisons a lot more. Then he ends up talking about the beginning of Legacy. So Legacy is a faction that was formed back in the day. This had Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes, Ted DiBiase were the main three that were shown on TV. Now these were all second generational talent wrestlers, so they were obviously working as a heel faction together, and Cody really enjoyed being a part of this faction. It gave him something different to do and helped him step out on his own as well. Then we move on to the beginning of the Dashing Cody Rhodes gimmick that he had. So they were talking about how, the vignettes were coming out and Cody was really excited to have something like this. And they end up talking about that face mask integration. So Cody started wearing the face mask after rumors went around that his nose had broken. And he was talking about how he was really finding his groove in being this dashing Cody Rhodes character, or more of the kind of bewildered character that didn't really want to show his face and was handing out paper bags to people. He was really enjoying being in that gimmick and was loving it 100%. He talks about his first WrestleMania match against Rey Mysterio and then his Intercontinental Championship title run, which happened in 2011. And obviously he's having a great time being the IC champion. He's doing great things, putting on really great matches. Then we end up moving on to Brandy Rhodes and how he meets her and starts dating her, and then they eventually do get married. And they end up talking about how Dusty, Dustin and Cody start working on TV together. So they were obviously all together at WWE Battleground in 2013. Now this was a tag match between Cody and Dustin against The Shield, so Roman and Seth. And then we end up moving on to the next stage. So once, that Battleground segment had happened, Cody then became Stardust. During the Stardust segment, we end up seeing the crossover events that start happening between Stephen Amell and Stardust. Now, a lot of things did come from Cody Rhodes being Stardust. He obviously appeared in a few episodes of Arrow, but also got to have a couple of moments during Monday Night Raw where he was interacting with Stephen Amell when Stephen Amell was there, kind of leading to the potential of a future match at some point between the two of them. Now, Cody was open about the fact that he was making this Stardust character work. He wasn't really enjoying it. He was starting to get frustrated with Stardust because, he felt like he had had such a good run during his Intercontinental run and his Legacy days that he kind of felt like this Stardust gimmick was not going to help him get to the main event. And you could tell that he, in these points in time, was starting to get really frustrated, and he said to himself that he was somebody who felt like he couldn't find the cheese, so he didn't know how to get himself out of this kind of situation. And he felt like the more he was having to be Stardust, the less he was becoming of Cody Rhodes. And the more he started to feel like he was at rock bottom as well. And he was calling his dad every single day, talking about, how frustrated he was and about how he thinks he can be better than this. And then Dusty brings up the idea of, well, why don't you just quit? And Cody says, I'm not a quitter, and, my mum would disown me if I quit. And then the idea of quitting and actually leaving WWE started to creep into his mind a little bit more. Then we move on to Dusty Rhodes. Now he starts with an NXT, and he starts really developing that group of core wrestlers that we still see to this day. So the Seth Rollins, the Roman Reigns, the Kevin Owens, the Sami Zayns, the Sashas, the Charlottes, the Baileys, the Becky Lynches. Pretty much everybody that you know from the early days of NXT were considered Dusty's kids. Now, this is briefly mentioned in the documentary how, the idea of Dusty's kids really did start to hurt Cody because, he felt like, well, I actually am really am Dusty's child, my mistake. And, these group of people are working with Dusty down in NXT, and I'm not getting that same, level of comeuppance from him. So it was really hard for Cody to accept the fact that a lot of these people were, getting a lot of one-on-one time with Dusty and were really developing their craft with Dusty, where, Cody is on the main roster struggling to even, move away from the Stardust character. And then we sadly move on to the part in time where, Dusty is really sick, and then Dusty Rhodes ends up passing. They cover the funeral of Dusty Rhodes and, how much hurt and pain that had on Cody and his journey. Cody did mention that, he felt hard coming back to WWE if he was going to come back as Cody Rhodes. But because he was still working under the Stardust gimmick, he had a lot of time to use that as an armor for his grief and for how he was feeling. He didn't have to try and pretend to come back as a Cody Rhodes, He had the opportunity to come back as Stardust, and Stardust was like a cover for his emotions and how he was feeling. The documentary moves over to the Stephen Amell match and, working as Stardust with him. And then it comes to the point where there are no creative plans for Cody Rhodes no longer as Stardust. So he's continuing with no creative plans forward to move him into something else. And, it gets to the point where he goes and talks to Triple H and he says, I want to punch this writer in the face because they've just ignored me. And Triple H is like, well, if you want to go and make some noise, you've got to go rattle the cages. So Cody then started to become resentful of continuing to having to be Stardust while Dusty was working in NXT, with, the talent of the future. And he eventually did ask for and was granted his release from WWE, which then he felt like that was a massive weight off his shoulders, as well as Brandy as well too. They kind of then just decided to up and leave, and that is when we come across the birth of the list. Now, the list was a list that was made by Cody Rhodes, which had a list of independent wrestlers and places that he wanted to go and work for, in terms of, he had a list of people he wanted to wrestle, and this was a way for him to have that list come to life. And it shows his first Evolve match from Evolve Wrestling since him leaving WWE. There is a lot of footage that is shown from independent wrestling companies, which I really applaud WWE for including these in the documentary. It is a fundamental and crucial thing to include all of this, because if we can't physically see for ourselves what Cody did outside of WWE, it doesn't allow the story to have that same feeling of, oh my gosh, he went out and truly made a name for himself, if you can't physically see where he's gone. And he starts talking about how he was building Cody Rhodes outside of WWE, and the loss of Dusty really motivated Cody in terms of having this journey of self-discovery. And it was at New Japan Pro Wrestling where they said that we want to have you come as the American Nightmare, which was where the American Nightmare was born. And this is the gimmick and the character that Cody has tapped into since, which is what we see in the presentation of Cody Rhodes to this day. And we are, shown different parts in the documentary where he's talking about how he's talking with different wrestling companies, but he's saying, I don't really want to be locked into a specific promotion. I want to have that sense of freedom for where I can go. And then it moves on to the birth of All In. So a lot of you will know All In was the first show that was done by AEW. Well, before AEW Inception it was the show that was created by the Young Bucks and Cody, which actually sold out. And then the birth of AEW ended up happening. We are shown, he ended up becoming a dad to Liberty. And we then get to see a little bit more talks about his discussions and his contract status in 2022 within AEW. Now, he did say that he was working as a free agent, and Brandy ended up mentioning that, his contract was basically not renewed on time, which is really shaky ground when you're a wrestler, because anybody can pick you up in terms of signing you onto a contract. And so basically Bruce Pritchard had heard that there was rumblings going on about Cody's contract not being up, or not being renewed, and it was within 5 minutes after having a conversation with a few people that Cody had reached out to Bruce Pritchard. Now, Bruce Pritchard and Vince McMahon the following day flew out to go and meet with Cody, and Cody had kind of felt like he wanted to just have this meeting just for closure. But it ended up becoming a business meeting, and we end up seeing, Cody Rhodes is technically coming home to WWE. Now, we did not know this in real time when this was happening, and he says that he can't say why he left AEW, but he left because of a personal issue, and he kind of felt like this was the time for him to really go for his first dream in wrestling, which was becoming the WWE champion. The documentary then moves on to the WrestleMania match setup, which was set up between him and Seth Rollins. Now, he was kept as an opponent that was going to be decided by Vince McMahon. And it was talked about how Seth Rollins' plans had kind of fallen through, so they were going to use Cody as the perfect opponent. And this was Cody Rhodes' homecoming back in WWE. And Cody admitted it. He said, at first I didn't really appreciate people saying, WWE is your home. But now he truly feels like he is at home. We see his first Raw back after WrestleMania, which is when he said he was going to go after the title that Dusty never won. The documentary moves into the Hell in a Cell match when we're shown footage of him training backstage and then finding out that he's torn his pec, and obviously that gradual process of him eventually going and doing that Hell in a Cell match, which was actually 2 or 3 days after he'd torn his pec. And we got to see a lot of his mindset going into the match, and he was sending a lot of voice notes to people and says, look, I know that we don't normally do this, but I really want us to continue this match. I feel good to go. I'm happy to do it, as no more damage can be done from this pectoral injury. And we see the Hell in a Cell match take place, and we see a lot of the reactions from the crowd. And then Cody Rhodes ends up going off to surgery. The documentary continues with him in his Nightmare Factory wrestling school, where he's teaching a class and having like a question and answer session. And we end up seeing a lot about his comeback from his injury, and he's worried and concerned that, you know, he's anxious, and he feels like he's not going to be the same as when he came back from AEW. You know, he's not going to feel as though he was in the same shape when he left to go and get a surgery when he was going to be coming back. There's a part where we see him go to the performance center where he has to go some analysis training, and we see him actually doing some in-ring work with Carmelo Hayes, getting him ready to come back and perform in-ring. The documentary moves on to the Royal Rumble and the Royal Rumble match and win that we saw for Cody Rhodes. I won't go too much into that because obviously we're now getting into real time in this documentary, so a lot of the stuff that's happening now we're well aware of in terms of what happened. And we end up seeing the WrestleMania match and the WrestleMania match build-up as well too, which obviously Cody Rhodes did not win the main event of WrestleMania, and he kind of talks about how that really affected him. And, you know, we're in real time now with this. We start to see that, you know, there is still work to be done for Cody Rhodes, and Cody says that there is nothing that is impossible for Cody as the character and for him. I loved this documentary, and that's where it finished off there. I thought they were going to go a little bit more into it in terms of where we are now, but I think finishing this documentary at WrestleMania was the perfect way to finish off the documentary because, as I said, we are now seeing a lot of this in real time. I love the WWE documentaries when they come out, and I personally think that this is my favorite documentary to come out of WWE. I'd said to a friend that, you know, I feel like this documentary you could show to anybody and they would go away with a deeper sense of appreciation for Cody and an understanding of who he is and the wrestling industry itself too, and just the idea of going away and having a little bit of time to discover yourself and coming back stronger and better than ever and knowing your worth and showing that you do deserve to be in the higher up spots where you think you need to be. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this recap of the WWE American Nightmare Becoming Cody Rhodes documentary. I thought this would be really fun to do because I've been looking forward to this documentary since it came out. If you enjoyed this, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and comment down below, and make sure that you go ahead and follow us on all of our social medias. They will be linked in the description down below. We'll be coming out with some more content for you guys soon, but I hope you really enjoyed this because I really enjoyed reviewing this documentary. I found it a lot of fun. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.